And we have our magic orange globe. Let's begin. So, today's lecture, this week's lecture, is Facebook Newsfeed. What we'll cover: how it's evolved, what models it uses, guiding principles, all that. Then we'll talk about how Facebook uses the feed structure to make money. So if we're talking about that how, why, first step is what the feed is. And the second thing, why it is that way. What are the useful consequences of feed being that way? Because Facebook doesn't just pick stuff to show you in a random order, right? It picks stuff to show you in a way so that Facebook can make more money. Then generally we'll talk about content management systems. We'll briefly introduce cloud. I mean, we get a more detailed thing about cloud as the course goes on, but just start off talking about what cloud is. We'll talk about ACID properties for databases. ACID properties are the things that basically let you know that for sure when you ask a database a question, you get the correct and current answer, right? If you adhere to ACID properties, you'll always get the correct answer. The downside is if you have a very large database and you strictly follow ACID properties, your system may be unworkably slow. So that's the trade-off for companies like Facebook and many others, is figuring out either how they can structure data to make it work faster with ACID properties, or what corners they can make, what corners they can cut to see, maybe you're not going to get the exact correct answer to your question, but the exact correctness of it doesn't really matter much. Okay? And then a little more about NoSQL systems that we introduced at the end of last lecture. Okay, so that's what we'll all cover over this week. Now, in case you've ever never used Facebook, anybody here never used Facebook? Oh, freaky. All right, well, I thought I was a latecomer because I joined, I think, in 2008. Okay, and by then, like everybody I knew, they were all on Facebook, and so yeah, I felt like the late guy to the party. Anyway, but I applaud people who don't. I have, it's much more common in my age bracket that people don't use Facebook, right? What you'll often see is like one spouse of a married couple will have an account and the other will be like, I don't want anything to do with that. So, anyway, it has a feature called Newsfeed, or more commonly just known as the feed. And the feed is basically this content stream, right? Photos, ads, whatever. Let's see if I'll show you my Facebook feed briefly, just as an example. We'll see what's going on. There's probably some inappropriate shit, but, we'll take that chance. All right. So this is the feed. All this stuff. We scroll down. We'll see what clowns are saying what today. Okay, that's an uncle of mine who died a few years ago. His wife posted some stuff. Here's some ads for t-shirts. Here's an old friend from high school. Here's another friend from high school. Here's another friend from high school. Here's an ad for The Economist. Here's something from a dude I know from Scrabble. What's that? Yeah. No. Here's something, some news thing. Oh, no. Some people posted a thing about that. And yeah, more ads. You get the idea. We know what's in the feed, right? Ads, stuff that people post about their lives, links that people share, things like that. That's what you see. Okay. Yep. So, posts and ads, right? Facebook wants to show you ads because that's how they make money. But they can't show you too many ads or you're just going to stop going to Facebook, right? You don't want to go to AdBook, you want to go to Facebook. So, they have to throw in a lot of posts. But then the question is, well, how do they mix and match, right? What's the distribution? So, key questions. Number one, what determines the feed's content sequence, right? How does Facebook decide, this post should appear before this post? Why does Facebook take that approach, right? Well, the end answer is so they can make more money, but the connecting steps are a little bit interesting. And last, the technical details of how the content gets managed and delivered. Okay? Yeah. It often is. Yeah. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the question is because I could only hear about a third of that. So. That very thing? Yeah. That's what's called a third-party cookie. So This podium's falling apart. I'm going to move this up here so you don't all die. Yeah, little bit of sidetrack. We do cover cookies at the end, but the idea is there's basically a little text file on your computer. When it says this site uses cookies, it recognizes that you looked at a product on another page, and then if they're using an ad application that's involves that site, that it falls under their umbrella, the cookie can say, this person, we recorded that data, they looked at this product, so when the ad application says, I want to construct an ad on this other web page, it's going to look at that cookie and say, I see the product you looked at, I'm going to pull that link from the database and pop that particular product in the ad. Yeah. So yeah, you can see that, right? Strictly speaking, that's probably, I'm not sure how Facebook does that. I think Facebook, their ads tend to be more independent. But you do see a lot of apps on Facebook using like ads for Amazon in particular. So yeah, I mean, that was the spooky thing for me when I remember when I first started seeing that several years ago. I was looking on this and how does this other page know? Whoa, what's going on? So yeah. Cool. All right. So way back when Facebook was called the Facebook, it worked in directory mode. Anybody remember MySpace? Anybody actually? Yeah? Yeah, a few? Okay. Yeah, when I first started, teaching here, everybody was like, oh yeah, MySpace. And now, it's like there's a few hands up. So, it's been really the circle of life, I guess. Yeah, so MySpace was what there was before Facebook, and it was directory mode, which means if you wanted to see what was going on with one of your friends, you actually had to go to your friend's page and look at all the stuff that they posted, right? So it was a more, you had to take a more proactive approach to finding out what was going on with people, okay? So users read what others had on their profiles. There was no feed. Facebook launched Newsfeed in 2006, which is pretty shortly after, people started hearing about it. I think it was probably 2005 when I first saw Facebook. There were, I was a TA, I was wandering through the labs, and people were looking at this site, Facebook, and it just looked like a long list of faces and names, and I was like, well, that's kind of odd, but here we are. Anyway, when Facebook didn't have nearly as much traffic as now, it was a lot easier to manage. There weren't that many users, nothing like it was compared to now, and certainly less friend activity per user, right? Because basically as the number of users go, people go from like having 10 or 20 friends who are like posting once a day to all having like 500 friends that are posting once a day. It's a lot more data to manage, right? Because Facebook has to sort through all of these, 25,000 different things that people could be putting in the feed, and has to prioritize all them instead of like prioritizing a small list of like 100 things. So initially, it was totally viable to show every user the complete chronological set of recent activity, right? So Facebook just said, somebody posted this an hour ago, good, we'll show that first. Somebody posted up something a couple hours ago, we'll show that next, and so on, right? There just wasn't that much activity back in the day. Okay, I remember back from MySpace, people would very often go for like, days without posting anything, and people didn't have that many friends on MySpace, or a lot of us didn't. And so, yeah, you could go to MySpace from like one day to the next and literally nothing would have changed. Anyway, but it's not like that anymore. So, with scale, as Facebook got really big, right, crossed into like billions of users, it had to prioritize and effectively throttle the feed, right? Basically, Facebook has to decide, well, what's the most important stuff for us to show you? We can't show you everything for all practical purposes, right? Because there's too many people posting too much stuff, and unless you're gonna like stay on Facebook for 6 hours to like scan through everything that everybody's done, it's just not gonna happen, right? So Facebook wants to show you the most interesting stuff for you. So effectively, they're throttling the field. For all practical purposes, they're not showing you everything. So you have more friends per user posting more often, that's going to limit it. And of course, advertisers, they want to reach users. So again, that has to get throttled too. Facebook has a whole lot of advertisers that would love to show you ads, but Facebook doesn't want to show you all of those either because you'll stop coming back. So on top of controlling the sequence for both, Facebook also has to look to the ad to post ratio, right? And basically, what they track is they try to put in more ads into your feed, and they try to pick more interesting ads to show you in particular. So if you're somebody that's interested in politics or economics or sports or shopping or TV or whatever, they try to show you the ads that are the best fit for that particular person, right? So me, I've been known to occasionally buy a t-shirt off of Facebook, through one of those ads. So I tend to get, more t-shirt ads perhaps than the average person would. But they try to figure out what works for individual users. Anyway, borrowing from Google's PageRank, PageRank was Google's system for how it would order the list of links matching a particular search query, right? So people put in a search query, and Google has to decide, well, out of all the sites in the universe, which ones are the best fit for that particular set of search terms. So similarly, Facebook used three attributes: affinity, weight, and time decay. And we'll talk about those now. So, affinity is basically a one-way connection strength. Basically, how interested you are in what another one of your friends has to say, right? So one way to do this, one way to calculate this, is through the number of mutual friends, right? So typically, if you have a lot of friends in common, you're part of the same social group, you're a tight little bundle of buddies, whatever, right? It's going to think, okay, that's pretty good affinity there. The other thing, interaction frequency. If you're frequently interacting with someone, right, you're sending them a lot of messages, whatever, they're going to think, oh, you're interested in that person. If you frequently like on the posts that they make, Facebook's going to say, oh, you like that person. You probably want to hook up with them, whatever. We're going to show you more of their stuff, okay? And you can see it's not necessarily symmetrical. See, it's not symmetrical because, for example, last I checked, the cap on friends was 2,500, right? So, for example, if you are, who is someone who is popular? Not me. Suppose, I don't, give me a baseball player. A-Rod. All right, I'll live with that. Okay. A-Rod probably has 2,500 friends, right? And let's say, oh, here's a guy that I'll call Ned. I know a guy named Ned who does not have many friends. And let's say he has, no, not 10. Let's say he has 50 friends, okay? And let me assure you, there's a reason why Ned only has 50 friends, and I'm surprised he has that many. But anyway, yeah. Okay. Now, if these guys are friends for whatever reason, by default, A-Rod is going to be 2% of Ned's universe, right? A-Rod is going to be a fairly substantial chunk. He's going to have a lot of affinity. By default, Ned is going to be a tiny fraction, right? Like 0.04%. It's going to be a tiny fraction of A-Rod's world. A-Rod has a lot of friends. Facebook is going to say, well, you're not super interested in this guy. But Ned is going to be like, wow, you really like this guy. So the one-way strength, right? A-Rod is probably more important to Ned than Ned is to A-Rod, right? We can understand that? It's not going to be symmetrical. Okay. On the other hand, right, it could also be, I'm going to get my mouse out. It could also be that suppose they have frequent interactions, right? Suppose A-Rod sees Ned as kind of a mentor and says, man, I'm having trouble with this part of my baseball game, or, J-Lo's acting kind of weird, and what am I going to do, right? And Ned gives him some good advice, and so they interact a lot and they become buddies. It is entirely possible that A-Rod's affinity for Ned could actually be observed to be greater than the other way, right? If A-Rod is commenting on a lot of Ned's stuff and A-Rod is really interested in what Ned's doing and he's sending a lot of messages, right? Facebook might say, wow, you know what? Even though you have 2,500 friends, Ned is a bigger part of your world than you are of Ned's, right? It is possible. Okay, so again, key takeaway, affinity is not symmetrical, right? It's this one-way connection strength between the two people. Because you just want to show content that's interesting to you. So they have to figure out, is one of your friends interesting to you, or is he a more peripheral, marginal person like, yeah, we had a drink in an airport 30 years ago, and we said, let's be friends on Facebook, and you haven't talked since. Okay. Next one is the weight. Weight is the significance of actions and content. So Facebook basically looks at how much trouble you expend to maintain this relationship. So if there are people that post pictures and you click the like button or whatever, that's kind of the lowest level of interaction, right? That's kind of a brain dead. You want to acknowledge that somebody's there, but you're not going to take a lot of trouble. If you take one of the other emojis, right, love or haha or whatever, Facebook will say, well, yeah, you put a little bit more thought into that. That shows a little bit more weight, right? If you actually take the trouble to type out a comment to somebody's picture, right? So now we're in the time of year where all my people are posting like pictures of their kids at their first day of school, and you write down stuff like, oh, wow, have fun, or what a little cutie, or something like that. Facebook's going to say, well, you took the trouble to actually write something. That's more significant, right? So all this kind of stuff, Facebook has its system for saying this particular action weighs more than another particular action, right? So actually taking the time to write comments, long detailed comments, becoming involved in running threads, Facebook's going to figure out, you two guys are buddies. We're going to not only show you, that'll affect the affinity, but also it's going to affect the kind of content you see as far as Facebook analyzes it. So I'm not sure about how detailed their system is, but I do know I get an awful lot of pictures of, kids doing their first day at school because that's the kind of stuff I click on. My wife, unfortunately, she got into a bad habit for a while where every time some horrible news thing would come up, about some kind of like child abuse case or something awful like that, she'd end up reading it. And then at midnight or 1 in the morning, she'd be like, oh my God, did you read about this awful thing? And I'd be like, no, because I'm trying to sleep. And she'd be, but I say, yeah, I know there's bad shit in the world, but number one, you're not going to fix it by waking me up at 1 in the morning. But number two, if you don't want to see it, stop clicking on it. She eventually stopped clicking on it because, yeah, that seems like good advice. All right. So that's how Facebook is going to show you the kind of content that you want to see. For example, if you click on all the videos, Facebook is going to show you videos. But if you never click on videos, well, those videos take a fair amount of data to deliver to you, so you're not going to see many of them. Okay. Last thing, time decay. Time decay is filtering out the older content. So, if something was from a week ago, 2 weeks ago, it's probably not going to be at the top of your feed, right? So all else equal, the ranking of posts continually declines, right? So the older it gets, the less likely it's going to be near the top of your feed. Now, for a while, you can have that decay be outweighed by user interactions. So for example, okay, so we can say time 0, I make a funny post about something my kids said, right? I just post up something funny, haha, whatever. Time decay, right, in principle, should look like this, right? It should be, in fact, time decay does, right? As time goes on, the, basically the rating, okay, it's going to go down based on time decay. But of course, the moment I see it, there's got to be a little time for Facebook to give people time to even see it, right? So what happens, suppose even if it becomes popular, it's likely to follow some kind of two-stage setup like this. Ooh, not like that. Okay? And then, ooh. We'll get this. There we go. All right, fun with curves, right? Is probably about what it looks like, right? At first, and so I'll put down here time. There'll be a little window where people are clicking on it, right? The time decay will be pushing it down, but it's being shown to more people, and so more people are, interacting with it in some way. And Facebook says, "Oh, this is good. The rating is still going to go up." And eventually, it'll hit the peak. Everybody who's likely to click on it in some sense has already done so or not done so, and then it's just the weight of time decay bringing it down. Now, if you observe Facebook fairly closely, you can see that your posts will get gradually released to new groups of friends, right? It'll be like when you post something at first, it'll be your like reliable core group of people that might like it. And then the next day you'll see like more peripheral people. And sometimes if you have something, it could echo on like 5 or 6 days, and people you haven't heard from in a year, they'll click on it. And because Facebook releases it in batches. They don't do constant real-time tracking of this rating for everybody, but at long intervals, every day or every half day, whatever, they recalculate it, and based on that, it might get echoed to new, wider groups of your friends. Yeah?
When you say time decay, does that mean like how long it's been on Facebook and as it gets older?
Yep, that's what I mean. Yeah, so the farther back in time it was that you posted something, all else equal, the less relevant Facebook is going to think it is, right? It's yesterday's news. Facebook doesn't want to flood people's feeds with yesterday's news. Okay. Questions on any of this? Does this all make sense so far? Makes lots of sense? Makes enough sense? All right, good. Okay, so those are the three core principles of the original EdgeRank. So EdgeRank was a system, it was great for a while, and you can think basically the way it works, 2006, Facebook brings a bunch of engineers, system designers, whatever, brings them to a table and says, nobody's really done stuff like this before. How are we going to do it? And so they kind of brainstorm and they come up with some ideas and they kick things around for a while. And they settle up on something like this. And they say, you know what? This is good enough to run with. Let's run with it. But of course, as they get more data, they can develop a more interesting, complex, sophisticated system, which in the 10 plus years following, of course, they've done. So Facebook continually gathers data about user actions and wow, this is weird. You're not seeing the same one I am. Let's see. Let me try that again. There we go. That was trippy. Okay. Facebook is always gathering data about user actions and interactions, right? Everything you're doing on Facebook, there's a pretty good chance Facebook is following that. So, what photos you like, things like that. And given enough data, Facebook can make pretty good predictions about user behavior. For example, if they can identify the general topic and tone of a post, right? So one of the things, obviously, we're in the politically charged era right now, and Trump is a topic of contention. There are a lot of people who dislike him a lot. There are a fair number of people who actually like him a lot. There aren't that many people that are fairly indifferent, right? So what happens is Facebook tries to identify, oh, here's a post about politics. It's a post about politics that involves Trump. Is it pro or is it con? Which of those is going to be more interesting to you? And Facebook uses a fairly, kind of a basic system, but they're working on it to try to figure out what you might be interested in. A lot of it is based just by what part of the world you live in. So if you're in Chicago, right, which tends to tilt left, urban locations in general tend to tilt left, you're probably going to get stuff that's more anti-Trump. I imagine if you go out to rural America, where things tend to tilt more right, be your right, you probably see things that are more pro-Trump. Probably. I haven't spent much time out there, so I haven't independently verified this, but I'm pretty sure it's true, because I know Facebook does track people's estimated political affiliation primarily by geography. So it does do that. Anyway, but in principle, if you had enough data, you could make pretty accurate predictions about whether somebody would like a particular type of content or not. Now, typically only a few variables are going to be strong predictors, right? So things like age, location, marital status, whether you have kids or not, any stuff like that are going to be fairly strong predictors, right? So if Facebook wants to, see, if you're probably going to like this picture because it's from one of your family friends and it's a picture of their kids going off to school, and you're the kind of person who clicks, who likes on your relatives' pictures of their kids going to school, right? Facebook is going to say, yeah, we get that. Okay. But there's a lot of less relevant variables. There are literally hundreds of other variables that Facebook looks at, and individually, they're not very strong predictors. But collectively, they might be. So things, for example, you might be a person like me who comes down to campus Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and you're pretty busy in that interval, and you don't spend a lot of time on Facebook. But Tuesdays and Thursdays, maybe you're not, otherwise engaged, and then, yeah, you might spend half an hour in the morning scanning through stuff. Facebook might recognize that and say, oh, look, it's a Tuesday, you have a little activity spike. It's a Thursday, you have an activity spike. They're going to recognize stuff like that too. Anyway, Facebook uses many variables. They have a very complex system, and the mix intermittently changes. Facebook is always kind of mixing it up, trying to re-optimize it, trying to keep people from gaming the system too much. Okay? But key takeaway, they used to use EdgeRank, which had worked pretty well, but had those 3 features. Now, in the many years since, they have a whole lot of data about user activity patterns. They include that in their ranking system as well. Okay? All right. So, next stuff, revenue streams. By far, the main revenue stream for Facebook is ads, right? I'll add on this, just as a big picture of what the world is in terms of ads. So, okay, online ad revenues. And we'll do a wedge for our big friends. So this wedge, and this is pretty close to true, right? See if I can fill that. Okay. Well, I'll do it with white and we'll look. This wedge is Facebook. All right. Do another one. You know it. This wedge is Google. And who's this wedge? What? Nope. Nope. Everything else. Okay? That is the state of online advertising in 2019, more or less. Okay, so Facebook is big, doesn't look big next to Google, but it looks big next to everything else. Okay? All right. Yeah. Anyway, so Facebook makes most of its money from ads. There's a few other mechanisms it has. Number one, they've been trying to do premium site content. I don't know if they're still working hard on that, or they've kind of abandoned it, or they're just kind of coasting to see what happens. But they are trying to do some stuff like that. I used to see ads in the loop for like a TV show on Facebook TV. So yeah, they're trying to do other stuff. Other things, any fees they get from site-enabled transactions. For example, somebody runs Candy Crush on Facebook, right? Somebody gets frustrated. They're trying to break a level for like a week and a half, and they finally give up and pay like a couple bucks to get some kind of power-up. You know Facebook's getting a cut of that couple bucks, right? Yeah, so that sort of thing happens. Anyway, and indirect sources, right? So those are the direct sources. That's the actual money streams. But the indirect sources, basically the multipliers, more users, right? If Facebook has more users, it's going to probably have more eyeballs seeing ads, more people clicking on ads, better chance of getting more people to buy premium content, better chance to get site-enabled transactions, right? So more users is pretty much a straight multiplier. The other thing, higher engagement. People are spending more time on Facebook and being more likely to click on things because Facebook has done a better job of showing them interesting content, right? If Facebook just shows you a random assortment of ads, it's pretty unlikely you're going to click on any of them. You're going to be like, well, none of these ads are really anything I'm interested in. But if Facebook can recognize who you are and what sort of things you like, and they can target those ads, they might get numbers anywhere from like 3 to 5%, at the upper bound of ads that actually end up in clicks and purchases. So if they can do higher engagement, both in terms of time, and in terms of the quality of content they're showing you, they can make more money that way too. Okay, so those are both multipliers. So accuracy leads to more money, right? If Facebook can do a better job learning about its users, it can show them custom content that'll help Facebook make more money. Users will be happier. So, overriding principle, better user experience leads to more time using. And I specifically chose the word using because, it's addictive quality. So, if Facebook can show you more stuff you want to see, you're going to come back and see more stuff, right? If you're like, wow, going on Facebook makes me feel better. I like the stuff I see on Facebook. This is good. Then you come back. One of the ways to do that, fewer posts from peripheral friends, right? So Facebook doesn't want to lock everybody out entirely. But you know, in life, we always have this kind of hierarchy. We have our close friends, and we have our used to be close friends that we still think well of. And then we have, you know, kind of peripheral people, again, you know, friend of friends. Yeah, it happens, right? So mostly you want to go on Facebook to see what's going on in the lives of people that are important to you, or the people whose opinions matter to you, right? You don't necessarily care about, you know, somebody that you don't really like that much, but they ask to friend you on Facebook, and you're like, yeah, okay, let's see. But you probably don't want to hear from them that much, okay? Basic advertising models. Number one, pay per impression. Okay, so pay per impression means Facebook gets paid for every pair of eyeballs that see the ad. That's what an impression is. And it works well for products that you're not going to run out and buy after seeing an ad. For example, suppose there's a new TV show coming up, or suppose, you know, they want to let you know that the Super Bowl is still happening this year. They run ads on Facebook about that, right? You're not going to click on that ad and watch the Super Bowl. You're not going to click on that ad and buy the whole DVD series of this, you know, new series that's just starting in a couple weeks, right? Because it's not out yet. But you are going to see the ad, and that's what they'll pay for. So products like that you're not going to buy right away are suitable for pay per impression. So what Facebook wants, more users, right? More time viewing means they're going to see more of those pay per impression ads. More ads viewed, Facebook gets more money. Okay. The other one, pay-per-click advertising, right? Which is right there in the name. Facebook gets paid when somebody clicks on the ad. They don't necessarily have to buy the product. So suppose, you know, there's an ad for t-shirts, and you say, wow, those t-shirts look interesting. You click on the ad, you go to the site, you browse around. You probably don't buy anything that day, but you might come back later and buy one, right? The advertiser is willing to pay for that, willing to pay for the possibility that you visit the site and buy something right away, or maybe come back and buy it later. So again, same principle, more time using, probably going to see more ads, right? And if Facebook can develop a better match, show you ads that you're actually interested in, you're probably going to get more clicks. So between these two things, more time using, more accuracy is going to lead to more clicks, and more clicks leads to fat stacks, right? Okay. So, basic problem, Facebook wants to control the sequence, right? Of friends, posts, ads, and the mix, right? Text versus images versus video, right? If somebody just makes a quick status post, how does that compare to an image? How does that compare to a video? So, primary objectives, number one, Facebook wants to provide customized, interesting content. So the feed that you see is going to be different from the feed that any of your friends see. And Facebook wants to make it interesting for you. And it tracks these statistics. It, you know, tweaks its formula and looks at the outcome. It says, okay, we changed the formula this much. Let's see what it does to user engagement. If user engagement goes up, then Facebook figures, oh, we're probably in the right direction. If user engagement goes down, they figure, oh, maybe that was a bad thing. Let's restore it to some different case. Okay? And of course, they can do that in parallel with a lot of different random customer groups, right? So they can periodically mix up the algorithm for different subsets of Facebook users and compare against how they all do. Okay. So it wants to maintain and encourage user involvement, and it tracks that. And ultimately, the reason why it does this, it wants to maximize its sustainable ad revenue, right? So if Facebook decided on tomorrow that they want to set up a new feed where it's 80% ads and only 20% user content, for a little short interval, they'd probably get a lot of people clicking on ads, right? They'd probably make a little bit more money in the short run. But with that kind of overpresence of ads, people would go away, right? If Facebook tried to sustain that, like an 80% ad ratio in its feed mix, you know, some other social media site would come around and say, we can do better than that. And then Facebook would start losing people. So sustainable ad revenue is a point, right? We know Facebook is free, so there's always going to be ads, and that's fine. But there can't be too many, or people will just stop using it. Even if they don't go to another social media site, maybe they'll just stop using Facebook and go out and, you know, meet people in real life or something. I don't know. Sounds kind of implausible, but it could happen. Okay. So, matching feed to user preferences. So there's a couple different ways where Facebook can try to learn what people like. One way is just to flat out ask people. Facebook could ask people, what kind of content would you like to see? And they could show you a list of topics, and you could check boxes for what things you want to see and what you don't. There's a couple problems with that. And this is something relevant to Netflix as well. So there used to be a lot of models that would just ask people, what kind of movies do you want to see, right? But people won't usually say, for example, so people often overrate their interest in, say, Academy Award-winning movies or, high-end dramas, things like that. When in fact, a lot of what people want to see is sex and car crashes. So, they won't actually say that, right? There's not going to be a box on, oh, that's what I want to see, right? A lot of TNA. So, a lot of users are going to falsely claim preferences that correspond to some idealized version of themselves. They're going to say to themselves, well, 20 years ago I watched a Best Picture movie, and I guess it was all right. So I'm going to say that I like that just so this anonymous, robotic questionnaire doesn't think I'm some kind of low-class person. But that's how people think. People, that's how they think. So Facebook says, we're not going to do that. We're not going to ask people what they want to see. Plus, it would be too hard to make a list of topics anyway. We're just trying to observe. We're going to see, what do people actually do? We'll show them a mix of content, and let's see what they actually click on and interact with. Okay? So, with matching preferences, basic rule, provide content similar to past interactions. If it was something you interacted with, if you spent time looking at it, if you liked it, if you left a comment, whatever, if you shared it, Facebook says, that's something you are interested in. So it looks at users who posts you've commented on. If you watch more videos, right, if you actually click on it and you watch the whole thing through, or you ask to see the high-res version of it, you do all that. And there's profile dimensions. Facebook tries to estimate, what it can about your profile. So based on all that kind of data, they're gonna try to estimate what you want to see. Now, of course, more recent data should be emphasized, right? Especially in your age bracket. So for me, once you reach a certain age, your musical tastes are fairly stable, right? You don't, in middle age, you don't spend a lot of time seeking out new bands. You're just kind of like, well, this was the music I listened to, and so be it. But in your age bracket, I would imagine that most of you listen to music very different from what you listened to 5 or 10 years ago. Is that probably a fair thing to say? Yeah, that's how, this is a time when your opinions are changing a lot. So, more recent data should be emphasized, right? So better reflection of current interests and interactions with friends. Likewise, when you're in high school, you're tight buds with all your high school people. You go off to college, you still keep in touch with some of your high school people, but your world changes, right? You meet people at college, you stop talking to your high school people as much, circle of friends changes, right? So, you want to emphasize recent data so that Facebook can show you what is more interesting to you. But the other problem is you get a smaller sample size. So if you only look at a narrow horizon, like what you did in the last week, you could have some really weird estimation errors. For example, if you left your Facebook account open one day and your little brother wandered by and started clicking on a bunch of random stuff and typing in gibberish comments into people's things, then Facebook would look at that and say, oh, wow, this is unusual behavior from you. Your preferences have changed greatly. Okay? So smaller sample, even if you've done other stuff during the week, that, 1 hour or occasional things where somebody else gets onto your account and does stuff, that'll throw it all out of whack. Okay? All right. The other thing, Facebook isn't going to update the feed sequence formula for every new interaction. They're not going to keep all of this in real time for every little thing you do. Because you think they got 2 billion users, they're doing a lot of stuff while they're on Facebook, that would massively overload the database. Instead, they have a system where, they track what you do in batches. Periodically, they release those batches and update your own personal profile internal to Facebook, right? So they aggregate them when they can into single variables. So, for example, if you say, posts by this person, right? They have an attribute for that. And posts of this category, again, politics, sports, whatever, boom, there's a category for that. And Facebook tries to keep it fairly simple, right? It tries to provide good enough accuracy without, overloading its systems. And again, this is all kind of Facebook special sauce, so they don't put a lot of that in. They don't make the details public. But also they can use it for ad content, not just for what you see on your friends' posts, but also the kind of ads you're likely to respond to. So again, they track product categories for ads, and they say, you have a 5% chance of clicking on an ad about t-shirts, but only a 1% percent chance of clicking on an ad for a car. I don't know. They'll figure it out, okay? Other stuff, political preferences ads, right? So this was a thing from a few years ago, basically how Facebook decided which ads to show people. Are you interested in a particular candidate, particular party? Are you fairly indifferent, in which case they're not going to bother showing you those ads? Things like that. Okay. So, last thing, and then here we'll end it off. There's a lot of open questions, okay? So this is the basic framework. Facebook wants to show content that's interesting to you, and they want to have a system in place for estimating what will be of interest to you, okay? But it leaves a lot of things unanswered. For example, how do you handle infrequent or new users, right? People that you don't have a lot of data points for. Well, they have to be integrated to that system, but do you give them special handling? One thing I've noticed, when you just add a friend onto Facebook, right, when you first connect, you tend to appear a lot more in each other's posts, right? You tend to see a lot more of that person's posts right away for like a week or two, and then it kind of tapers off and goes back to normal. But yeah, there's a little spike in there, okay? How should posts time out or be refreshed, right? Basically, how often should they do that? What should be the decay rate? So we can all agree that older posts should gradually vanish, but how sharply should they vanish? Should they, take about a day or a week or 2 weeks to vanish? There's a wide range of possibilities there. Special promotion. So if Facebook itself wants to advertise something, like when Facebook Lives first became a thing, they would include notifications about that in the feed. How does Facebook integrate its own advertisements into the feed? What else? Would it take money for advertisers to pay for higher visibility, right? So advertisers are already paying, but Facebook says, okay, based on the relevance of this ad to this user, we'll put you here in the feed. But what if the advertiser says, but how about if we give you an extra $1 for every click? And Facebook is like, yeah, okay, we'll bump you up a bit, right? So how much is that going to cost? You get the idea. Viral posts from a user's friends. One of the annoying things on Facebook is where somebody posts something really good and you see like 3 or 4 of your friends have simultaneously shared it by the time you get to see it. And you're like, oh, fuck, they all posted it. It's a good article. I want to like it, but I don't want to pick which one of my friends to like. So I'm just going to hit like for everybody because, yeah, I don't want to play favorites. Okay? Anyway, how similar other groups of users have to be relevant. How much video length constitutes a view? Do you have to view the whole thing? Do you have to start watching it? You make it about halfway through. How does Facebook track that? The relative importance of reactions versus likes. So, the like is the easy one, but you have all these others. Are they equally important? Are they more important? And of course, global feedback, right? So it's feedback mechanisms for things like spam, things like not safe for work or otherwise offensive content. How does Facebook prune that from the feed? Okay? So these are a lot of more open-ended questions that can exist within that framework. All right. We will see you Wednesday.